The last survivor of a death world on a planet where life itself seemed to fight against existence, there was one human left standing. This was a death world, unforgiving, savage, and almost impossible to survive on. The terrain was hostile, filled with dangerous creatures, wild storms, and extreme environments. Few dared to step foot here, and fewer still managed to make it out alive. Her name was Maria. She had been stranded on this planet after a disastrous mission went wrong. Her ship had crash-landed, and all her crew members had perished. She was alone, desperate. But unlike most who would have fallen into despair, Maria learned quickly that in order to live here, she would have to become something more, something beyond just human. Every day on this death world was a struggle. She spent her time scavenging for food, avoiding deadly creatures, and trying to find shelter. The massive predatory beasts roamed the jungles, their eyes glowing in the dark, their bodies built for killing. The plants were toxic, the skies unpredictable. Nothing was safe. But Maria had survived, and as the days turned into weeks, and then months, she started to notice something strange. She was changing. She wasn't the same frightened woman who had crash-landed on this planet. Her body had adapted, becoming stronger, faster, more aware. Her senses were sharper, her reflexes quicker. The survival skills she had developed were second nature now. She no longer feared the dark or the beasts that stalked the night. Instead, she hunted them. One evening, as she sat in her makeshift shelter scanning the horizon, Maria noticed movement. A large creature resembling a massive lizard had come into view. It was more than just a threat. It was an apex predator of the death world. Its scales glinted in the dim light and it stalked toward her shelter, its hunger unmistakable. It was the kind of beast that would tear a normal human apart with ease. Most would have fled, but Maria was no longer most people. With steady hands, she grabbed a sharp stick, crafted from a fallen tree branch, and silently approached. She didn't hesitate. She knew that if she showed any weakness, the creature would attack. The stakes were high. If she didn't defeat it, she wouldn't survive another day. As the creature lunged at her, Maria rolled to the side, her movements calculated. She stabbed the sharp end of the stick into the creature's side, just behind its rib cage. It howled in pain, but Maria was already on her feet again, moving faster than the creature could react. Within moments, she delivered the final blow, sending the beast crashing to the ground. Maria stood over the fallen creature, breathing heavily, but feeling something she hadn't felt before. Power. It wasn't just the thrill of victory. It was the realization that she had become something more than a mere survivor. She wasn't just fighting to live anymore. She was becoming the apex predator of this planet. In that moment, Maria understood something profound. This death world, with all its dangers, was shaping her into something new, something unstoppable. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was thriving, and the galaxy would soon learn just what a human from a death world could become. The mysterious encounter. It had been nearly a year since Maria's crash on the death world, and in that time she had become an unstoppable force in the wilderness. The creatures of the planet no longer saw her as prey. They learned to fear her. Her name, though unknown to anyone but herself, had already started to ripple through the jungle like a whisper of a ghost. But the death world wasn't hers to keep. At least not yet. One day, a strange noise shattered the stillness of the forest. It wasn't the roar of a beast or the wind howling through the trees. This sound was different, unnatural. It was the sound of machinery, heavy and foreign. Maria, who had learned to trust her instincts more than anything, crouched low behind a rock, her eyes narrowing. The jungle around her was eerily quiet, as if even nature itself had held its breath. Through the trees, a small ship emerged from the sky, its metallic body glinting in the afternoon sun. It was sleek and advanced, a far cry from the crude ships that the humans of her time had flown. A landing craft equipped for exploration, judging by the markings. The ship touched down with a soft hum, and Maria's heart pounded in her chest. She watched from the shadows as a group of figures in bulky suits began to disembark. They weren't human. This she could tell right away. Their skin was a shade of green that shimmered slightly in the dim light, and their eyes glowed an eerie blue. These weren't the first aliens Maria had seen on this planet, but they were the first who had dared to land. The aliens began to gather around their ship, speaking in an unfamiliar language, their voices deep and strange. Maria listened carefully. She didn't understand a word they were saying, but the way they spoke to each other suggested they weren't afraid of the planet. They were confident, as if they were invincible. For a moment, Maria considered leaving them to their exploration. She had survived long enough on her own, and knew the dangers of this planet better than anyone. But then her curiosity got the better of her. She needed to know who these beings were. What did they want on her world? Stealthily, she followed them, staying hidden behind trees and rocks, her body moving silently through the underbrush. Her experience with the planet's wild creatures had made her an expert in moving unnoticed, and these aliens, despite their advanced technology, seemed oblivious to her presence. Hours passed as Maria watched them, learning their movements, their behavior. She noticed something. Despite their confidence, there was a subtle unease in their eyes, a fear they tried to hide. They weren't prepared for the dangers of the Deathworld, not by a long shot. They didn't realize what lurked in the shadows. And then, it happened. One of the aliens, a young one distracted by something in the distance, stepped too far from the group. Maria's instincts kicked in, and before she could even think, she moved, faster than the alien could react. In a flash, she was on it. A clean, precise strike, just like she had done countless times before. The alien was dead before it hit the ground. The others turned just in time to see the young one fall, but what they saw wasn't a simple human survivor. What they saw was something far more terrifying, a predator that had just claimed its first victim. And now Maria was staring them down. The aliens froze, their eyes wide with disbelief. They hadn't expected this. Not from a human. Not from anyone. She stood there unarmed, her expression cold and unwavering, her body poised and ready for whatever would come next. In that moment, Maria realized she wasn't just a survivor anymore. She wasn't just on the Deathworld, she was its master. And these aliens had made the mistake of stepping into her domain. What they didn't know was that the real terror had only just begun. The awakening. The jungle was silent again, but the stillness felt different now. The air seemed heavier, charged, with an electricity Maria couldn't quite explain. Her pulse thrummed in her ears as she watched the remaining aliens scramble, their eyes wild with panic. They were no longer the confident explorers who had landed with the arrogance of those who believe they can conquer anything. Now they were trapped in a place they didn't understand, surrounded by a force they couldn't comprehend. Maria stepped forward from the shadows, her gaze locked on them. The moment the last alien saw her, really saw her, he froze. His expression shifted, the color draining from his face. His breath caught in his throat. He had seen humans before, of course, but never one like this. Never one who had become something more than human. For the first time since she had arrived on this planet, Maria felt something stir within her. Something deep. Something primal. It was as if a switch had flipped inside her mind, like a force had awakened that had been dormant all this time. She felt stronger, faster, more in tune with the Deathworld than ever before. It was a sensation she hadn't been able to name until now. She wasn't just surviving the Deathworld, she was becoming it. The beasts, the terrain, the storms. It was all a part of her now. And in that moment she realized that she wasn't just a human. She was something far more dangerous. The aliens, meanwhile, started to move again, but they weren't so quick. Maria's senses were sharper than they had been a few moments ago. She could hear the slightest rustle of their movements, feel the tension in the air as they tried to decide whether to flee or fight. But Maria knew better than to waste time waiting. They would never leave her alive. They had seen too much. As the first alien raised his weapon, aiming it directly at her, Maria didn't hesitate. Her body reacted before her mind could even process. It She dove to the side, avoiding the blast with a speed that surprised even her. It was as if the jungle had whispered its secrets to her, guiding her movements, making her faster, more precise. Her feet hit the ground and she was already up again in the blink of an eye, closing the distance between her and her prey. The alien's weapon discharged once more, but Maria was already on him, her body moving like a force of nature. She didn't fight with brute strength or the raw aggression of an animal. No, she fought with the deadly precision of something that had learned the art of survival. Her hands were as quick as lightning, her strikes calculated, her movements fluid and graceful, like a shadow that could not be caught. In seconds, the alien was on the ground, incapacitated. His weapon was useless, his body limp. Maria stood over him, her chest heaving, her eyes wild with something that could only be described as exhilaration. This wasn't just survival anymore. This was mastery. This was awakening. She looked around at the remaining aliens. They had seen the power in her, but they hadn't yet realized what they were dealing with. To them, she was just a human, stranded on a death world. But to her, the galaxy was beginning to reveal its true shape, a shape she was now a part of. The fear in their eyes confirmed it. She wasn't just a threat anymore. She was a force of nature, and the galaxy had no idea what was coming. Maria smiled, a smile that had nothing to do with mercy and everything to do with the awakening of something primal within her. She was no longer the human who had crash-landed on this planet. She was something far more terrifying, something no one had seen before, and now the galaxy would know what it truly meant to face an apex predator. The fight for survival, the air, was thick with the scent of blood and the acrid tang of fear. Maria stood tall, her feet planted firmly on the jungle floor, the weight of the moment settling over her like a heavy cloak. The remaining aliens were no longer confident. The events that had unfolded in the past few minutes had shattered their illusions. They had come here expecting to study the Deathworld, but now they were the ones being hunted. Their leader, a hulking figure with glowing violet eyes, signaled for the others to retreat to the ship. But Maria wasn't about to let them escape so easily. No one who set foot on her world would leave without facing the consequences. Without a word, she moved, faster than their eyes could follow, like a ghost through the trees. Her body had become one with the Deathworld, as though it had been forged here in the heart of the planet's chaos. Every instinct screamed at her to attack, to finish what she had started. The aliens, once so sure of their superiority, now scattered in all directions, their panic evident. One of them, the smallest and quickest of the group, darted toward the ship, hoping to reach the safety of the craft before Maria could catch him. He had made a mistake. Maria's feet barely touched the ground as she surged forward, her movements fluid, her eyes locked on her target. In an instant, she had closed the distance between them. The alien barely had time to react before Maria's hands shot out, grabbing him by the neck and lifting him off the ground. He struggled, his glowing eyes wide with terror, but it was useless. She had become stronger, faster, more ruthless than anything they had ever encountered. With a swift motion, Maria snapped his neck. His body went limp in her grip and she tossed him aside like a rag doll. The other aliens watched, horror written on their faces, as she turned her attention toward them. There was no more hesitation in her actions. No mercy. No fear. The alien leader barked an order in a language Maria didn't understand, but it didn't matter. She wasn't going to wait for them to make the first move anymore. She was going to make them regret ever landing here. One by one they attacked, thinking they could overwhelm her with sheer numbers. But they underestimated her. She was no longer just a survivor. She was something far beyond that. The first alien lunged at her, but Maria was already behind him, her arms wrapping around his torso in a move so fluid it seemed like she was one with the jungle itself. With a sickening crack, she twisted his body and dropped him to the ground unconscious or worse. Another alien tried to strike from above, but Maria rolled to the side, dodging the blow, then stood up in one motion to knock the alien off its feet with a powerful kick to the chest. Every move was purposeful, precise. Her body was a weapon, and she was its master. They were just prey running for their lives. The leader, the one who had remained at the back of the group, charged at her with a weapon, the energy blade glowing bright and deadly in the fading light. Maria didn't flinch. Instead, she stepped toward him, her movements controlled and calculated. The blade swung toward her, but she ducked beneath it with a speed that was almost unnatural. In that moment, she knew the fight was hers to win. She didn't hesitate. With one swift motion, Maria lunged forward, disarming the alien and knocking him to the ground. He was no longer in control. It was her world now. The others watched as their leader lay defeated at her feet. They had made the mistake of thinking they could defeat her, of thinking they could conquer this world. But they had underestimated her. They had underestimated the planet itself. Maria stood over them, breathing heavily, her heart pounding. She hadn't just won the fight. She had proven that she was the predator now. This Deathworld had forged her into something new. And the galaxy, with all its advanced technology and alien species, had no idea what was coming for them. The fight for survival had ended, but Maria's reign had only just begun. The intergalactics. Horror. The quiet hum of the alien ship's engines was the only sound that followed Maria as she watched the remains of the alien crew retreat into the wreckage of their ship. She stood motionless, her eyes narrowing as the remaining survivors scrambled for any means of escape. But escape was no longer an option. They had learned too late that they were not the hunters here. They were the hunted. But Maria didn't care about them anymore. They were nothing but a footnote in her story, a fleeting reminder of her first real test in the galaxy. What concerned her now was what would come next. Word of her existence would spread. The Deathworld, once a forgotten corner of the galaxy, had just gained an infamous reputation. And with that reputation would come attention. Her instincts told her it wouldn't take long for others to come, drawn by the mystery of the woman who had wiped out an entire team of seasoned explorers without breaking a sweat. And when they came, they wouldn't come to learn. They would come to destroy. That was the nature of the galaxy. If something was unknown, it was feared. And if it was feared, it was eradicated. Maria wasn't sure how much time passed before she saw them, a new wave of ships breaking through the atmosphere, sleek and menacing, descending like vultures circling their prey. But this time, they didn't land. They didn't need to. The ships were equipped with weapons that could level entire cities with a single shot. These weren't just explorers. These were hunters, sent to capture or kill. The first blast hit the ground near her with a deafening roar, sending a shockwave through the jungle. Trees splintered and cracked, and the earth itself seemed to tremble. Maria felt the explosion, but it didn't faze her. She had learned long ago how to endure pain, how to fight through it. The galaxy's weapons, no matter how advanced, were no different from the dangers she had faced on this planet for the last year. But this was different. These hunters weren't like the aliens she had faced before. They weren't weak or unprepared. These were soldiers trained to take down whatever threats the galaxy threw at them, and they weren't going to stop until they had taken her down. Maria didn't hesitate. She sprinted into the dense foliage, moving faster than the eye could follow, weaving between trees, rocks, and thick vines. The explosions continued to rain down around her, but she was already a step ahead. She knew the land like the back of her hand. This was her home, and she wasn't about to let anyone take it from her. As she moved deeper into the jungle, she could hear their voices. Alien voices, distorted by the frequency of their comms, shouting orders to each other. The hunters were close now. Their landing craft hovered overhead, casting long shadows across the jungle floor. They had set up a perimeter. They thought they could trap her. Maria smiled. Let them think that. The first hunter appeared, stepping cautiously through the trees, his weapon raised and ready. He didn't see her. She moved like a shadow, silent and quick, her body blending with the environment, part of the landscape. The hunter's eyes scanned the trees, and for a moment he relaxed, believing the jungle to be empty. Then the world went still. Maria's body exploded into action. She moved faster than the hunter could react, her hand clamping around his throat before he even had a chance to aim his weapon. His eyes widened with fear as she pulled him close, her grip tightening with a ferocity that sent shockwaves through his body. He struggled, but it was useless. She was too strong now, too precise. In seconds, his life was snuffed out. The others heard the struggle, and now, they were ready. The hunters moved in, trying to flush her out, but Maria had already disappeared. She was the apex predator. She moved between them like an invisible storm, striking with precision and purpose, her attacks surgical and quick. They never stood a chance. Soon, the ground was littered with the bodies of the hunters who had thought they could take her. Maria didn't revel in the violence. She didn't need to. She had become something far beyond what they could ever imagine, a force of nature forged by the Deathworld itself. But even as she stood victorious, the distant hum of more ships filled the air. More hunters were coming. The word had already begun to spread across the galaxy. A human alone on a Deathworld had become something more, a predator beyond comprehension. And they were all coming for her. Maria didn't flinch. The galaxy had just awoken to the true nature of the apex predator. And it would learn, as they all would, that once a human embraced the Deathworld, nothing would ever be the same again. The apex predator revealed. The fires of the hunter's ship still smoldered in the distance, the wreckage scattered like the bones of fallen titans. The jungle once again was quiet, too quiet. But it wasn't the silence of peace. It was the eerie calm before the next storm. Maria knew what was coming. The hunter's failure would only fuel the galaxy's desire to see her destroyed. She had shown them what she was capable of, but what they didn't know yet was how far her transformation had gone. Maria's mind had sharpened, her instincts had evolved, and her body had grown into something almost unrecognizable. The brutality of the Deathworld had altered her, yes, but it had also enhanced her. The fight for survival had pushed her beyond human limits, made her something no one could have anticipated. She was now something different, something that lived beyond fear, beyond the concepts of mercy and weakness. Her eyes scanned the horizon as she sat atop a rocky outcrop, her body poised, her senses attuned to every shift in the air, every movement in the jungle. She wasn't just watching for her next threat. She was studying the very patterns of the planet, understanding its rhythm as if she herself were a part of it. The trees, the ground beneath her feet, the wind, the entire Deathworld had become an extension of herself. And that was when she felt it, a change in the air, a tension, the signature of something new arriving. The galaxy had finally sent someone to finish the job. But this wasn't just another group of hunters or soldiers. This was different. This was a new breed. Her instincts told her to be patient. She remained still, waiting, as a ship, larger and more advanced than any before, descended from the sky. It was sleek, dark, and foreboding. The kind of ship that belonged to an empire, not a rogue faction of mercenaries. She could hear the hum of its engines even before it touched down, a low vibration that seemed to resonate in her chest. This wasn't just another team looking for a quick payday. No, this was the real threat. These were the ones who had heard the whispers of a human becoming a legend and feared what she could do. The ship's doors opened, and out stepped the leader of this new group. A towering figure clad in armor, his face obscured by a helmet, his presence cold and commanding. Behind him, an army of soldiers filed out, each one more advanced, more dangerous than anything she had faced before. These weren't just hunters. These were elite warriors, designed and bred for a single purpose: extermination. The leader's voice crackled through a loudspeaker, though Maria didn't need to hear it. She could feel the intent in the air: domination, destruction. He didn't care about the Deathworld or the creatures on it. He didn't care about the aliens who had fallen before her. He only cared about one thing: eliminating the threat she posed. "I am Commander Thrax," his voice boomed, "and I will be the one to end you." Maria's lips curled into a smirk. Let them think they were in control. The galaxy had no idea what it was dealing with. This wasn't just a human stranded on a hostile world. This wasn't even a mere survivor. This was a predator, one that had learned to adapt, to overcome, and to conquer. Maria stood slowly, her muscles rippling under her skin, her eyes locked onto the advancing soldiers. They moved with confidence, their weapons gleaming with deadly intent. But Maria didn't flinch. She was beyond that now. The fear, the uncertainty, all of it was gone. She was more than just human now. She had become a force, a being shaped by the harshest conditions the galaxy could throw at her. Thrax's soldiers began to circle, forming a tight perimeter. They had come prepared. But they didn't know her. They didn't know how far she had evolved. With a sudden, fluid motion, Maria lunged into action. Her body blurred as she moved faster than any of them could react. In mere moments, she had torn through their lines, her hands striking with precision, her movements a deadly dance honed by the unforgiving world around her. The soldiers tried to retaliate, but their weapons were useless against the speed and power she now possessed. Every strike she made was calculated, every move deliberate, designed to incapacitate or kill. Within minutes, the first wave of soldiers had fallen, their bodies scattered across the jungle floor like discarded toys. Thrax watched, his mask unmoving, but something flickered behind his eyes. Fear. He hadn't expected this. None of them had. Maria turned to face him, the last remaining threat, the final obstacle standing between her and complete domination. The jungle had forged her into something unrecognizable, something that wasn't just a survivor, but a being that bent the very rules of nature to her will. She was no longer just a human. She was the apex predator. And as the commander took a hesitant step back, Maria's eyes gleamed with the knowledge that this galaxy, and everything in it, was about to learn the true meaning of fear. No one, nothing would ever stop her again. The galaxy will never be the same. The jungle was still. Its once vibrant sounds, the rustle of the leaves, the calls of distant creatures, had gone silent, as if nature itself was holding its breath. Maria stood at the center of the devastation, the only living thing in sight. Around her, the wreckage of the elite forces lay scattered like broken shells, their once pristine armor now tarnished and bloodied. The sky, once clear, had turned a deep crimson, the reflection of the chaos that had just unfolded below. Maria had done it. She had torn through every last one of them, the galaxy's most elite warriors, and left nothing behind but whispers. Whispers that would spread across the stars, far beyond this planet. Word of her had already started to leak into the deeper corners of the universe. The woman who had survived the Deathworld, the human who had turned the tables on the galaxy's most dangerous hunters. The moment felt surreal to Maria. She stood in the aftermath, not out of pride, but out of something more profound. The understanding that her transformation was complete. The galaxy had no idea what it had just witnessed. The concept of an apex predator wasn't just a title anymore. It was a new reality. A reality that would change everything. Maria hadn't just survived the Deathworld. She had become its embodiment. She was the culmination of every brutal test, every challenge, every fight for survival. And now, the galaxy would have to reckon with what it had unleashed, a human unbound by the limitations once imposed upon her species, wielding power beyond comprehension. But her mind wasn't on the distant stars just yet. There was still something here, on this forsaken planet, that called to her. The Deathworld, her new home, had revealed all of its secrets to her, but there was something even greater beyond it. She could feel it. A power that had been dormant within her, rising to the surface, something ancient that was waiting to be harnessed. She was no longer just part of the planet. She had become one with it. The heartbeat of the land now pulsed in her veins. Maria stepped forward, her eyes scanning the horizon. The jungle stretched out before her, dark and uninviting, but to her, it felt like the universe itself. This planet had forged her, made her into something no one, human or alien, could ever hope to defeat. But the galaxy was still out there, oblivious to the storm she was about to unleash. Behind her, the wreckage of the alien ships smoldered, The bounty hunters and military commanders had come to claim her, to eradicate her. But all they had done was become part of her story, a story that would soon echo across the stars. Maria knew it wouldn't be long before someone else came to challenge her, someone bigger, more powerful, more determined. But they would fail, just as the others had. She was beyond that now, beyond their reach. Her next move wasn't about survival. It wasn't even about power. It was about something deeper, something more dangerous. A new order. The galaxy would have to reckon with the fact that humanity, once weak and fragile, had evolved. And Maria would be its representative. She would be the example that no other species could ignore. The thought of confronting the larger galactic powers, those who controlled the stars from the shadows, excited her. The once proud empires of the universe, ruling over countless worlds with iron fists, would soon feel the shift. The human who had been discarded, the one who had been underestimated, would rise up and shake the very foundations of the galaxy. Maria turned, her silhouette outlined against the crimson sky. The hunters who had arrived seeking her destruction were nothing now, footnotes in the story of a new era. She was no longer a lone survivor of a death world. She was the herald of a new reality. A human who had transcended what was thought possible. And as the stars above twinkled coldly in the distance, Maria smiled to herself, knowing that the galaxy would soon learn what it truly meant to face an apex predator. Nothing would ever be the same.